Welcome back. I can't resist, as you can see, we are back in British Columbia. That is the Mighty Dash. That is a pretty short strip, about 3,800 feet. We're not unbelievably loaded with fuel because we're not going to take a very long flight. Having done the Pilot Edge I-11, or at least the practice for it, which can be very, very stressful, we are going to do a little relaxation flight here, a little meditation, a little beautiful journey into some really amazing terrain, amazing scenery, courtesy of Orbix, and the airport here courtesy of almost Orbix, an outfit called Oryx, O-R-Y-X Sim, which is in the Netherlands, I think. And we are going to go into more terrain than they have ever seen in lovely Holland. Everything about this is like the anti-Netherlands. Everything is above sea level, some of it is a lot above sea level, and none of it is flat, and there isn't a bit of ocean anywhere around here. We are about, a couple hours drive to the east, southeast of Vancouver. We're in Chilliwack, or did I say that? I don't remember if I did, but we are right here in Chilliwack, and we are going to head to West Kootenay, or Castlegar, on the Columbia River. And we're going mainly because we're going to fly a very challenging approach. We're going to fly a circling approach into runway 33 right here in Castlegar, but there isn't really a good approach directly to 33 because of all the terrain. So all of the approaches come in down towards the RNAV approach, at least comes down toward runway 15. I believe there are a couple other approaches to 33, and I think they use some sort of offset localizer. I am not entirely sure. Let's check it actually now that we're there. Let me see. Okay, that's an, oh, actually, you know what? The LDA is actually to a beacon just to the southwest of runway 33, and then it's a circling approach from there. So I don't think there's a nav aid that offers you any direct navigation directly from the south or from the southwest because there's too much to smack into. Not that there isn't, as you can see right here, a ton to smack into all around the place. Safe altitude within 100 miles of the airport is 13,400 feet. And it is verboten over on this side, and over on this side it's certainly verboten to circle because there are plenty of things to smack into. You're running into minimum safe altitudes like this: 9,400 feet, 8,900 feet, 10,200 feet, 10,300 feet, surrounding Brilliant, this particular NDB. So it is it's a challenge, to say the least, but this is the approach we're going to fly. We'll fly this on RNAV and come down here and then break off the approach at Ipvav, or maybe Nopak, and then circle around, hug this side of the hill, come all the way around here, and then do a 180 and basically follow. There's a road you'll see when we get there that comes snaking down along the side of that mountain, and pretty much follow that road and then jump off the road and you'll have the runway right in front of you. Or at least I hope so. In any case, we are going down to a circling minimum of 4,500, and our touchdown zone elevation is, and I'm reading a Canadian chart, not an FAA chart, so I'm a little bit hinky on what is where. We'll find our field elevation. It's kind of embarrassing to sit here and not be able to read a simple chart, but they lay them out differently everywhere, and I can't find the touchdown zone elevation on this. Let's see. Safe altitude, approach course. Let's see if I can find it here on the aerodrome chart. CYCG. There we go. Let's try this. Elevation 1623, so 4,500 minus 1623 is 3,500, 2,800, about 2,750. So 2,750 above the ground is where we should be for our minimum for circling, but obviously we're going to set a barometric MDA here and we'll follow that, but just for my own reference. So 2,800, which means we need to go about 5 miles this way and 5 miles back to get down from here. So we'll get to here and we will probably go down precipitously right here, so that's 3 miles here, so that's 900 feet, and so we need to get down another 1,900 feet, so that's another 6 miles to run, so about 3 miles to here, and then, okay. I'm just basically in my head kind of figuring out how far I'm going to have to fly and circle to come down at a comfortable rate of descent at about a 3-degree glide path. But the reality is we're going to get here and we're sort of going to eyeball it. It's going to be intuitively obvious about how far we have to fly. So what we'll do is we'll descend from here down to pattern altitude, which is 1,500 feet above. Let's try to remember that again. 1,500 feet, so that's 3,123, so we have to get down to about 3,100 feet to be at our pattern altitude, and we'll just keep that in the back of our minds, and it's all going to become obvious when we see it, because what we're really going to do is when we see it, we're going to fly out to about this point here and then make our turn. We could probably come down more steeply, and the last time I did this I turned right about here and it was kind of a little bit tight, so I'm just going to fly out to this particular kink in the river and just commit that pretty much to memory. Anyway, pop into the cockpit. We're going to be flying at 2,323, flight level 230. Let's try that in English. Check that our bus ties are off, that our heats are on, that our anti-ice at the moment is off, although I got a strong feeling that's going to come on. Our landing altitude's 1,800 feet above sea level, so we'll spin our landing altitude up to 1,800 plus 500, which is 2,300. Our lights are all set, our cautions are all black. Set all the way up to 230. We're cleared straight up to it. Outcell, go around. Our V-speeds have actually gone up because I loaded some passengers on here. We've got a full load of passengers, although I don't fully know why anybody wants to fly up into this part of the world in such abysmal weather. This is clearly the off-season, but there's a demand, so we'll give them what they want. Set this to runway heading. Get my weather. CYCW-CYCG 2997, winds fairly negligible, so that should do us. 2997, 060. We just cross-fill our fuel and our flight plan onto the other side. And there we are. Our flaps are set. I'm just going to operate them there because that's really more a FSU IPC or aircraft quirk than anything else. When you first start it up, sometimes the flaps are reversed and you hit your key to raise them and they don't go anywhere and you look like a fool. Alright, let's see. Rest of our pre-flights. Pre-flights, huh? Alright. Just a little demisting here. And check that our gear pins, because this is the professional model, are stowed. If you didn't see those, you'd have to shut down the engines, open the door, and go out and pull your landing gear pins. Otherwise, the landing gear wouldn't retract. Auto feather is set. We'll set our range. And we don't, for some reason, seem to have a flight plan displaying. Let me make sure this is on nav FMS 1. And it is. And check here and see why we don't have a flight plan. I think I know the answer why. The answer why is because we don't have our initial fix activated. So the way you do that is you hit DTO, direct to, and then 2 for Kesta. That's our first waypoint. And now we go to our flight plan, and now we have a magenta line going here, and we've got the rest of our waypoints entered. But just to be on the safe side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through all of them. So what I've done is I've hit format. I've got it up in this map mode. It's not like a Boeing or Honeywell FMS and a Boeing where every leg you step through it moves you one waypoint. Instead, this moves you 3 at a time. So it's a little less convenient, but we can see we've got Kesta, which is the entry point to our J500, then Emeto, then Sensa, and then Dasby, which is our exit from the J500 and the beginning of our arrival. So, pays to check. Enter our fuel on board, which is 4740. 4740. And our passengers are 76. They all have trombones, by the way. And if you don't get that joke, ask your granddad. And cargo, we've got about 1,900 pounds of cargo. Calculates our zero fuel weight. We're going to save 1,000 pounds to fly to our alternate, which is Nelson, just up the river. And 900 to hold. And a little special extra of another 500. And there we go. Hit our perf. And we've got tons of fuel. This is erroneous right here. It's showing our fuel flow based on idle. And as you can see, our fuel flow here, as I just squeeze this a little bit and make it a little bit less squat. There we go. Our fuel flow is 440 pounds per hour per side. In fact, when we get going, it'll be about 1,200 pounds per hour per side in cruise. So that at the moment is just overly optimistic. And we will set our runway heading, which is there. And we will quickly get this show on the road. Before I do that, by the way, I look down at our bleeds right here, and you notice how they're showing yellow? That is a caution, and so I'm going to set them to min, which is where they should be, and now they're showing white. Going to be an NTOP 90% power departure, flaps 10, Trim is set. Get us in nav mode from the get-go. We don't have a departure procedure here. We are just going to hop in the air and let's go. Looking for stable power, and it is. And just maintain center line. 80 knots. Cross-checked. V1 is 123, or when we run out of runway, whichever comes first. There we are. Gentle pull-up because we have ample power. Bring the gear up. Get ready to pull back the props, but first we'll bring up our flaps, which will drop our nose just a little bit, so we'll compensate the trim. If you trim this plane right, you can fly it with pinkies. Alright, we'll bring back our props to climb. And as you can see, we're in a little bit of a valley here. We're just in the foothills for the Rockies, and there they are. And that is our terrain display, and you can see that at our present rate of climb, it is figuring that these are not a factor. But that's quite a peak right there. C'est formidable. Alright, we'll set ourselves into IAS mode for the climb. Engage our autopilot. Turn off our pumps and our auto feather. Bring our bleeds to normal. And at least for a moment, admire the scenery while we keep an eye out for icing. It improbably says we are at 15 degrees centigrade right now. I don't think we are. I will say this, I think, and I'm not sure, but I think that's the Fraser River. And once again, oh, there's the ice. Turn on our boots, turn on our prop de-ice, open up our engine doors so that any ice that gets shaken off the wings gets broken up and spit out before it hits a turbine stage. And I'm just going to break through the window here and show you this amazing terrain. This is why we're flying up here now. I just can't beat that. So, our next waypoint is Kesta, where we'll join the J500. Just going to take my feet off of the rudder pedals and retrim. This airplane likes its rudder trim. It is a very long plane with very powerful engines and a good size stabilizer and rudder, but you know, this is a several generation stretched plane that started out about 25 feet shorter. So it's like a big, it's got a big polar moment is what it is. So looking for 10, we can turn out our lights. Ah, look at that valley. That's not bad. The clouds, by the way, are Rex soft clouds, and the weather's by active sky next. The terrain is Orbix Pacific Northwest and I believe Northern Rockies. The airports are RX Sim, and they're okay. The textures are a little smoothed over, I found, and a little bit sort of cut and a little cut out. Like you saw the runway there, the borders of the runway weren't kind of jagged and slightly irregular like you'd see on the real thing, but you know, they've got nice terminal buildings and nice little objects modeled, so it's really, it sure beats the default. That's there's no doubt about that. And we continue to go up at a sharpish clip, about 2,000 feet per minute. My only concern is that we're going to be descending before we even finish climbing. But I do need some altitude. Look at how the sky cleared up just as we got above that layer of fog and overcast. Look at this. One thing I'm doing here is I'm checking this little dingus that sticks out of here, because that is really the most reliable indicator of whether you might be building up ice on your control surfaces, because ice builds up there first because it sticks out into the airstream and because the different pressures involved and all the rest of that. So even though there's an icing warning that displays here, it's not the sensors that it uses, I'm told at least, and the sensors on the icing sensors on all kinds of airplanes, I'm told that when it really comes down to it, they're not entirely to be trusted. So the one way you can check is to look at that little spigot on your windshield wipers, at the windshield wiper hinge, and if you can see ice building up on that, you know there's trouble further back. So having looked at that and seen no ice, and having seen that the ice detection enunciation has extinguished, I turned off my anti-ice. The one thing you can do in a model that you can't do in the real plane is do this, or this, and just look at your surfaces. What you can do in the real plane, although it's probably awkward from where you sit, is you can sort of look around like this and kind of crane your neck this way and look there and see if you see ice out on the leading edge, and if you can, you know it's probably all over the place. Down there, by the way, is, I think, the Canadian Pacific Railroad, which snakes all along the Fraser River around here. But we're going to be going to the Kootenay, the intersection, the joining, the confluence, there's the word, confluence, of the Columbia and the Kootenay. I was up here once as a kid, and you could, except for the sediment from the lakes, the rock sediment, the limestone, and actually in one lake, the copper deposits, which made the whole thing blue, you could, you just wanted to go face down in these lakes. They were so crystal clear and pure. Just an amazing part of the world. If I ever win the lottery, that's probably where I'm going to end up. I learned something from another video on YouTube from the guy who makes FSI Panel, the software that lets you build approaches and then program them in and start up your aircraft right on them. See this little magenta triangle right here? That indicates your track. And it's a bit academic when you're in FMS mode because your magenta needle always points at the track. But you see how we're deviated in the heading? Imagine if we were flying using the green needle there. I've set up the green needle there. And imagine that were the VOR, and we wanted to track in on the 65 radial to the VOR. You would not put this index mark on that and on 65 unless there were absolutely no wind whatsoever. But if there were any little bit of crosswind, you would instead put the needle on the magenta triangle, and that would be the correct track even though your heading were like this, and that's how you would figure it out. At the moment it's academic because the FMS is flying the plane, but wouldn't always be the case. And I'm also checking our lateral deviation, and our lateral deviation is actually 1/10 of a mile, which is surprising to tell you the truth, because normally it is dead on. I wonder why that is. But because of this crosswind, 39 knots from our right rear, that is probably why we got a little bit off track, and now we're on track. And we're coming up on 1,000 feet away from our cruise. And just before we get there, I'm just going to bring our props back to cruise. And we're back in a little icing. On come the boots. Let's see if we can see it. No, it's pretty negligible. And I'm just going to slow down our climb a little bit. The way I do that is by rolling this back towards nose up. And we're 1,000 away. And that moves our climb speed down. That's that index right there. And away we go. Now the other thing is I'm going to set in our MDA, which is, first of all, there is no decision height because we're not using radar altitude and the procedure does not allow it. So we set an MDA, which is barometric. And I believe for circling it was 4,500. Now that is going to be fascinating because I believe the minimums are below that. And if that's the case, by all rights we should divert. But let's just see what our minimums are. Or our minima are, like that. CYCG. Our weather is cloudy, negligible winds, that's good. Ceiling, few at 3,000, broken at 8,000, so we might be able to find some holes in the clouds to sneak through. And while we're at it, let's plan our descent. Our constraint is at Tykes 9,500, so we hit VNAV. Tykes 5. It automatically puts this up. It knows where we're going. We set no offset because we're in steep terrain and although we know it's okay to be at 9,500 here, it might not be at all okay to be at 9,500 2 miles before here, which is why we're not monkeying around with that. Alright, that's good. Okay, we can't arm our approach yet. This is absolutely why I like simulated flying, by the way. It is because we are in the clouds over British Columbia right now in the plane. In real life, I'm sitting here in an apartment in New York and it is raining and it's kind of gross out, so it's good escapism. Let's look up also our other nav aids around, which are a pair of NDBs, and that's pretty much it. So one of them is Brilliant, which is YK. Let's just take a look at this other one here. Okay. Actually, we'll do two things. We'll tune in the localizer and we'll tune in Brilliant, which will substitute for our, it'll be a sanity check for our final approach fix. So Brilliant is 269. Set that as nav 2. Non-directional beacons, how quaint. Okay, that'll go in for nav 2, and for nav 1 we'll set our localizer, and it is 110.1 with a course of 178. Now recall the way we set our course here is by holding down the format key. This is how you set it without having to get out of FMS mode at the moment. And 178 is the course. So let's see, 110.10? I don't think that's right. Was it 110.10? It is 110.10. Okay, good. And we'll make that be nav 1. So I'm going to set up my white lollipop needle to be sourced to nav 1 or VOR 1, and I'll set our green lollipop needle or RMI needle, pseudo RMI, to be ADF2. And let me see if I set 2690 and 2690. Alright, so that's our ADF2. So our green needle, when it shows up here, will point at our NDB, and our HSI, if we switch it over, will point, or our white needle will point to the localizer. So we'll have guidance on both of them even as we continue on using the FMS. That is known as belt and suspenders, or in my case it's called idiot proofing. And we're getting near the barber pole speed, and you see our fuel burn is now 2,500 pounds per hour. Just quickly go to our perf page in the FMS and check. Alright, so we're going to have an extra hour and 12 minutes when we get over Castlegar, so we're in fine shape. And we're 6 minutes away from top of descent. And let's see what our constraint was again. 9,500, so I will set that in the box. You know, I don't know what constitutes the box. You know, you hear that shorthanded on the radio for a lot of things. Usually it's the transponder, but, you know. 350 on the heading, 2426 in the box. Technically, you're not supposed to shorthand anything. You know, there's a standard radio lexicon you're supposed to use, and that way you're understood no matter where you are in the world. In reality, here in the United States, there is a certain, well, a certain tolerance for and even appreciation of colorful lingo. So I listen in on the radio a lot, and when I fly occasionally in real life and get to listen in on the radio, I fly with a buddy of mine. I'm just slowly building hours. When I do that, I'm flying mostly in the New York ATC area, which is very busy, and so you hear a lot of chatter. It's mostly purposeful chatter. There's not a whole lot of lollygagging around, but everybody's got their own little snappy stamp on the lingo, and it probably is baffling as hell to international flight crews, but it's fun to listen to nonetheless. If you ever get a chance, tune into Kennedy Tower on live ATC and just listen to them jockey planes around all over the place, from all over the place, and it can be quite something. And they're amazingly, once you get involved with it, and as long as you stick to business and don't waste their time and know what you're doing, they are remarkably accommodating when you consider that they've got hundreds and hundreds of planes every day entering, leaving, and transiting their airspace. They are really, really good. A good buddy of mine, I think, put his finger on it about New Yorkers and their attitudes and how they seem to outsiders, but then how they actually are when push comes to shove. He said New Yorkers, my late friend Peter Freundlich, one of the greatest writers I've ever had the pleasure of knowing, a great broadcast television writer and a great blogger, and just an amazing user of the English language. He said New Yorkers are not nice, but they are kind. And that kind of summarizes it, I think. Alright, so what we're looking for is we're waiting for the VNAV deviation flight path indicator, whatever you want to call it, to illuminate. Okay, we're now starting to point to the NDB, and that is illuminated. So we'll set VNAV for our descent. And as we fly past Castlegar, because we're going to fly past to the north and then head out to, I'm on the wrong plate, we're going to fly off to the north of it here and then come and turn to the southeast to hit it. As we fly more this way, that needle there is going to start to point more and more and more and more and more to the right, because the airport will end up being off of our right wing. So another way to check and see whether we're actually where we need to be is if this green needle, which points to the beacon, starts to swing. The DME for the localizer, which we are not picking up with our white needle yet because we're really too far away, or too far offset. The DME, at least for it, says we're 60 miles away, and that is 60 miles approximately that way. Same as this. It's pointing to almost the same thing. A final sanity check when we get the white needle and we have the green needle is if they're roughly lined up with each other, and they are roughly lined up with, I think, the 1792 not 173, 188. Let me just double check our localizer approach to make sure my course is okay. That is not good if it's wrong. 178. Make sure that's right. And again, I'm going to check it by holding this down. Holding this down. There we go. And yes, 178. I just misremembered it is what I did. Just for yucks also, we're going to set that on the first officer's side, which we can do without any format tricks because we can keep this up in nav. Actually, it should be in nav 1. Nav source. Be nav 1. And it echoes the other side, so okay, that's something we learned. Alright. So that is something to know. Set our V speeds while we can. Come in flaps 15. And actually set a V app that is a little bit higher, but first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll off the power because we're going down. And in a minute I'll retrim the rudder because you got to. Alright, while we're there, we'll just set our V app for, actually make it a little higher because actually this is going to be my maneuvering speed. Just use that as a convenient marker because I don't have room to put 3 on there and I don't want to keep my maneuvering speed in my head, and actually make it just a little faster. Alright, there's that. We'll retrim our rudder. Set our seatbelt signs to on, which they are. When we get below 18, we will turn on our lights and pumps and everything because we're going to be coming up on 10,000 above the ground quicker than we know it. Alright, so 9,500 going to 8,200. Cross-checking our rate of descent, which is 1,700, 1,700. That is set. That is set. Alright. Arm our approach. And you see how this is starting to offset as we get closer to the field, and the field gets closer to being behind us. You know, right now it's about over there, but when we get through with it, it'll be right about there, and then we'll come around and come back down. We'll actually turn to right about 173, right about there. You see, there's our turn right there and down this way. At the moment we are fat and relatively happy. Coming to 18, so let's get our local altimeter. Which is 3035. Set 3035. And we are 15 miles till we enter our approach. Or it's our transition to our approach. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there beneath us is the mighty Columbia River. So theoretically, if we were worried about not meeting minima, and we were willing to live a little dangerously, we could, you can see right here, make a right here and follow the Columbia River, unless this is the Kootenay, unless this is the Fraser, and down goes Fraser. We could follow this all the way to here, but we're going to stick to the approach. We're going to dance with the one who brung us. I don't know why. Probably just because it's more fun. But if we were in a small plane, we could easily run under these clouds and just go up the river. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it were a float plane, though, because then we could just put down wherever we needed to, but no such luck. All right, 15.9 for 9,500. We are coming down, as you can see, at quite a clip. There is our approach. Let's just narrow down our scale a little bit. And as you can see, our ADF is starting to deviate a little bit more. The airport is right there, and it's pointing right at it. Have we crossed Dasby? I do believe we have. Alright, so Tykes is our altitude constraint. We have to be at 9,500 or above by Tykes, and we're at 14.5, so that's 5,000 in 17 miles. And let's see, 5,000 times 3 is 15 miles, so we can do it. Since we're going to slow a little bit anyway, down to a turbulence penetration speed, which is about 210. We're going to get there even more comfortably, and we'll turn on our ice protection. And it's already on. Intake doors are open. I'm not going to increase our rev speeds just yet because we are comfortably above stalling. So there's no need at the moment. But we're getting a righteous little pounding. Okay, 12 to Tykes, and we've got 3,500 to go, and 12, we can come down 3,600. So that's cool. You notice it is adjusting our rate of descent, so in fact, no matter what I'm doing here, it's already assumed, it's already calculated that it can make it. So even if I walk the power up, we will still make it. It'll simply steepen our descent to get us there. Alright, having penetrated the turbulence, maybe. See how this is turning more and more to the right as we get closer and closer to going past the airfield. Alright, now that I've set our power, I just want to sightsee for a minute because this is just fantabulous, especially with the weather. The clouds and the mist, and the sky, and the frozen river down there. Not bad. As we load a little bit of scenery. And I'm just keeping my hand lightly on the controls because if the turbulence gets too bad, then the autopilot will disconnect and we'll be on our own. Alright, we'll turn our bleeds to min, turned our lights on, turn our pumps on. Not going to touch our props just yet. God, look at that. There's going to be some convection there. We're going to go through some stuff. Well, we're at just about the right speed to go through it. And there's our turn at Eplet. And we're 1,000 away. And we are 3 miles, 3.3 miles from Tykes, so we are on a perfect perfect profile. And we're 16 miles from the field, which is that way. This is pointing directly to the missed approach point, just shy of the runway 17. And again, we're going to fly a circling approach, so we're going to fly to runway 17 and then circle. Okay, there's Eplet coming up, and we have to be at 8,200, so let's just spin our altitude down. Okay, we're 1,000 away. Square up our heading bug, so in case we have to jump into heading select mode, we're cool. And I'm going to very quickly sightsee here. See if we can see the field, which should be right around that way. Damn, this looks good. Check our missed approach procedure, which is to fly straight up. Okay, climb to 7,000 on runway heading, and then make a climbing left turn, which is right here, 2349. Okay, very steep climbing turn. Okay, we're due to go down to 7,200. Bring our heading around. Bring in our first notch of flaps. And you know what? I think I'm going to fly the plane. Why the hell not? Okay. We're good down to 7,200. We'll come off the power a bit. And we'll get ourselves into a 1,800 foot per minute descent. Should be comfortable. Just retrim for the descent. That's about right. I could fly the flight director here and get the vertical guidance, and maybe I will. It'll take us through this cloud, but that's okay. Okay, we're down to our minimum for the moment until we get to Resden. We're just above it, actually. $72.80, $72.60. We're just going to kiss that minimum. Now we're looking at our artificial horizon in this cloud. It's very easy to get confused. So what we're looking at and saying to ourselves is we're looking right at that gauge and we're saying that is the airplane. I'm going to bring out the gear just so we can get some drag going here. And now we're good down to 6,500. And we're going to get there pretty quick. So let's start to level out, shallow that out. I'm going to spin this down to our runway height. Okay, there's 6,500. I busted it just a little bit. Bad pilot, bad. Okay, well there we are. Now we're fine. And we've got a little bit of low cloud. This could be interesting. All right, let's bring in some more flaps. And we're good to 5,700, so let's arrest that right there. Okay, there's the field. Okay, I'm visual with the field now, so let's just do our circling approach. Bring in our last notch. There we are. Put ourselves in standby on the autopilot. And as you can see, this is not designed to be a direct approach to that runway right there, because it leaves us very high. So we'll turn this into our crosswind leg right here. And we're going to come down to pattern altitude, which is 33, about 4,300, which is right about there. Feed in some power. Now I'm going to make this landing flaps 15. I'm not sure whether I should, but we'll see how we get on, as our good friend Flight Sim 441 says. You see the road there on the left of the runway? We're going to fly out to about there, and then we're going to follow this road on in, making sure not to hit that there. As a matter of fact, we'll fly almost out to this meadow here. We're just keeping ourselves rock steady level here if we can, and we just passed our missed approach point, and we are fine. Don't want to get too low. I want to keep visual contact with the field. And basically we're eyeballing this, and we're not going to do this precipitously. The last time I did this, I turned final right about here, and I regretted it. So we're just going to hug this side of the hills. And we're going to take advantage of the fact that the mighty dash is very nice to hand fly. So we'll just hand fly it. I'm going to wait till I get to the point over this next hill, or rise, where the river and the terrain widens out, and I'll make my turn there. We have enough visibility ahead and behind us that we don't have to worry about losing the field if we fly too far out. It's going to give us a little more power. Going to put us in reduced noise profile landing mode. I'm going to acknowledge that our VNAV is disconnected, and there we are. Alright, so I've got a little bit of room here to widen out, and then I'm going to flirt with disaster by making a pretty sharp turn back towards the field. Just trying to keep us level. I've got terrain clearance here, and in a second I will have enough lateral clearance to make the turn. Just taking advantage of the fact that we are visual. Otherwise, we would have had to have flown to the localizer, which we've flown past. We're 1.5 miles past it, and then we would have had to have done a very sharp 270-degree turn or so in order to follow the instrument procedure. It would have been doable, but a little bit spicier than I'm in the mood for on such a relaxing day. So we're turning back towards the field, roll off the power, get us into a nice gentle descent, and there's the field, and we are red over white, so we judged that okay. Now I'm going to head for this notch right here, and that's where I'm going to turn to final. Picking up a little speed here, but I'm going to bleed it off in a second, so I'm going to actually duck below the glide path possibly a little bit. Maybe not. No, I think I will have bled the speed off enough by then. Just keeping the runway in sight here. No, we'll be fine. So I'm actually going to have to bring some power back in. Not too much. It's not a very long runway. I'm going to aim for that house. Roll off a little power. Come down just a little bit.
500.
And start our turn. And there's a power line there. That's no fun. I don't think that's supposed to be there. We're going to pretend it doesn't exist. I think that's a scenery artifact. As a matter of fact, I know it's a scenery artifact. Okay, down comes the nose. We clear the power line.
100.
Roll in a little power.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
And welcome to Castlegar. Where we will miss that turnoff, but we'll make the next one. And it's a good thing too, because that's the end of the runway. Just show you the facilities here. Oh, you know what? No, we have to turn around. Forgot about that. We missed the only turnoff. And around we go. Totally forgot about that. Cute little airport, though. Well, anyway, with that, great flight. And as we head on into the terminal here, I think we'll depart from here next time and maybe head to Vancouver. So with that, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And as always, thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time.